And next thing I know, I'm having like a 15-minute long conversation with Matt Fradd. And his response was, "You're the first abuse survivor I've ever met."
Matt, thank you for allowing that moment to take place. Having worked in the field of domestic violence, it's something very special and something not to take very lightly that a survivor has opened up about their experience. Welcome to The Rich Dawn, where eternal beatitude begins in this life. I'm Lauren Michele, and today I have with me the host of this show, Kyle Dean. How are you today, Kyle?
I'm doing very well, Lauren. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm happy you chose to be on the show.
Indeed. So what are we talking about today?
Well, today I thought it would be a great opportunity to share with your viewers an event, a very special event that you had attended back in July, and to share some of the information that you gleaned as well as some of your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting being on this side of the aisle. I'm usually the interviewer, so thank you so much for having me on and fulfilling that role. What Laura Michelle's referring to, of course, is the 2024 Catholic Creator Conference held in Steubenville, Ohio, over the weekend of July 12th, that Friday, and through the 14th. It's actually the weekend that President Trump almost got assassinated, and
Right.
I was with a bunch of influencers of varying capacities together when we all got the news. So I mean, there was just so much to unpack from that eventful weekend,
Right.
and happy to get into it with the viewers and listeners today.
Right. Yeah. What an experience for all of you. So tell us about where it took place and some of those people who were sponsoring it and kicking it off for us.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So we've got the itinerary right here, and it was put on by my man, Kyle Whittington. Great first name. My understanding is that Kyle recently moved to Steubenville, met Matt Fradd. They grew closer, and essentially Kyle kind of lofted this idea and was like, it would be really cool to get a bunch of different influencers together and to talk. Matt loved the idea. It started as a small time thing. It quickly grew. And then by the time we were getting all these email updates about what to expect, it was really a well put together production. And shout out to Kyle Whittington. Thank you so much for everything you did behind the scenes to make it possible. And so, we've got Matt Fradd with Pints of Aquinas. It kicked off on Friday at his cigar shop, Chesterton Bar, downtown in Steubenville. And then Saturday was the main event, which was held at the brand new St. Paul Center. My professor, Scott Hahn, recently developed, had built, and opened this great facility at the foothills of the University of Steubenville, Ohio. And Matt Fradd made a comment that it was his first time ever there. I mean, this is like a brand new, almost like unveiling of this important apostolate that they're doing. So they helped to put it on. We had Catholic Answers, made some incredible friends over there. They're based out in California, and others. I mean, you had the Pipe Cottage. We had Dr. Allen give a talk on Saturday about being good stewards of your apostolate, of who God blesses you with, and so many others. I mean, there were so many incredible people there. We had Teresa Llaneros, popular YouTuber, a journalist, credentialed journalist, who put on a branding symposium for a bunch of the influencers, while somebody else put on a, starting out with your equipment symposium that was kind of a split portion. So, I mean, so many different great people, and we met so many YouTubers. I affectionately refer to some of them now as the God Squad. We can get into that a little bit more because we're on different text chains now, and everybody's sharing tips and sharing ideas about how to grow your apostolate and build up the kingdom of Christ here on earth. So incredible time.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to hear about that fruit that's coming from it, especially as so many of you are growing your work and your content. And why not share with those around you who are also doing such similar faith-based work to serve the kingdom? So that's really good to hear that there's that Catholic description of the people that you're working with. So Nice.
Yeah.
What do you have to share initially that stuck out to you the most, that was the most impactful of what you experienced?
It's hard to pinpoint one single moment. I mean, the first one that comes to mind chronologically, I guess I'll start laying the backdrop for that by just laying out what it was like getting there, right? So I went with my man Dennis G., co-founder of East to West Theology, and we carpooled down there together. And, you know, as we're getting there, I'm learning more about the landscape. I've noticed that a lot. There's like, I'm still trying to figure out Steubenville. So I started going there in 2019 for my theology master's, which I'm finishing up. And, you know, I remember 2019, I think, was the year that I met Catholic to the Max, their apostolate there in that region, where they put on so many different productions, so much artwork. So I've been supporting their work for 5 years now. They actually made a mention of their apostolate at this thing as well.
Good.
And every time, you know, I find myself going down to Steubenville and just, you know, learning about the local culture and everything else, it's like this Catholic Mecca. I was there for Father Pavanka's installation on the Feast of St. Francis of Assisi 2019. And I remember somebody making a comment there that I think they said that about 13% of the clergy in America are formed at Franciscan University.
Oh, I've heard that as well.
Which is like astonishing. That's more than 1 in 10.
Right. What a
And
blessing.
so it is clearly, obviously, a Catholic Mecca. The other half of what I hear people say all the time, I mean, every time I've ever been down there, is like the mafia is like still kicking around there. And they're not like, I've heard so many conspiracy theories about like, they're still influential, they're not still influential, but they're just kind of blocking, like, you know, people trying to utilize and revitalize the city to make it even more Catholic than it already is. And I just found that to be such a fascinating dynamic, because, you know, we here in Buffalo have to deal with those kinds of issues. I'm sure every major city has corruption, but you know, there's something about Steubenville where I guess historically it was the halfway meeting point for different mafias between like New York City and Chicago, which is why it has this like this jaded history in addition to this incredible vibrancy of what's going on there now. So anytime you're there, you can kind of feel it in the ether, like this is a special place.
Right.
A place with a lot of character, a place with a lot of, you know, spiritual warfare tension, if you will.
Yeah.
And a lot of different things going on. So, you know, we're getting down there, we're kind of getting in the zone of like shedding the, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly spiritually of Western New York, and taking on the experience of this area. We roll up at the Chesterton bar, the cigar bar that Matt Fradd, I believe he hosts Pounds of Aquinas in that same building upstairs. And it's a great setup. You know, you come in and it's got a familial vibe, and you have the opportunity to just meet with your peers, collaborate, talk. I'm assuming on some days you might be able to sit down quietly and read a book, you know, when it's not so much of a social gathering. And so we get in there. My man Kyle Whittington's got this like ridiculous cigar. It's like halfway to the floor.
Oh boy.
Like straight cancer stick. And homie is just like, he knows he's in charge. He's just like chilling on this thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was awesome because he wasn't pretentious about it at all. He's just like, yep, I'm here. This is what I'm doing. And it was awesome. It was really cool. So you're coming in, the tone is set, everybody's chilling, having a good time. You've got free pipe tobacco options on the table. Everybody's sharing, collaborating.
Very welcoming.
It is a smoke fest.
And smoky.
Yeah, so you get in there, billowing cloud, pregnant woman not allowed.
Right.
You know, I mean, it just wouldn't be apropos. And I'm thinking because we were in the third trimester at this point.
Yes, we were.
So this was a rare time out, and it truly a blessing. So to answer your question, you said what was one of the most remarkable moments? It was almost immediately upon getting there. It was like right at the beginning. So I walk in, and there's Matt Fradd. he just kind of made an announcement to everybody. Right as Dennis and I are getting onto the premises, he's like, if anybody wants to spread out a little bit more, we could go down into my basement. We can hang out in the basement. It's kind of like a dungeon. It's a little gloomy, but if you don't mind that, come on down. Oh. And then he just like darts down there. And I'm looking around and literally almost like no one follows him. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to leave my homie alone. Like, I mean, unless he wants no company, which, I mean, I'm sure he'd be content either way, but... Right. So I'm like, yeah, let me check out the digs, like I've seen the back of it here, and, I've been there once before, but, so I get down there, and yeah, there's like, I don't know, 4 to 5 of us in this, you know how basements are. I was going to say how dungeons are. Like an old, unfinished basement with the stone foundation. It's large, right? It's like basically the lay of the land. And so it's an open space, somewhat low ceiling, and, dimly lit. We're chilling. And next thing I know, I'm having like a 15-minute long conversation with Matt Fradd. And, we caught up on some things. We rekindled the first time that we had ever met in early March, I think like March 2nd or something, 2017, when he came to the Buffalo Diocese to witness to our local clergy here. And that was the first time I had met him. We'd had an interaction then. But this was the first time that I ever had the opportunity to reveal to him that, I'm an abuse survivor and that I've been through some pretty intense things, and it's essentially just sharing with him like it's strange to figure out my way in the media apostolate world as somebody that has inherited this baggage because of not what I've done but the failings of others.
Absolutely.
And the only reason it was even relevant to bring that up is because it's the first time I ever got to connect the dot for him that the night he and I met was the beginning stages of what would end up becoming a Pulitzer Prize of broadcast journalism earning story that I ended up telling later. Like that night, that early March 2017 was the beginnings of the whole thing. Because I was actually commanded by a local priest to go to that event, not to see Matt, although he did a great job. I was commanded to go there to meet with the secretary to the bishop. And it's the first time I did, and the rest was history. That laid the groundwork for this entire diocese changing.
Right.
And I just thought Matt should know, like, dude, you put on an event, and it happened to be a piece of local history for us here. So, we're getting into that. And the thing that really stunned me, and it takes a lot to stun me, but Matt hits me back with, I think I was asking, like, what is your advice for someone in my shoes in this world, having, dealt with different people and in making the circuit yourself? And his response was, you're the first abuse survivor I've ever met. And
that is quite the response.
It's just, it taught me a lot. Obviously it took some unpacking, but in the moment you just wouldn't have expected something like that because, I think he's like number 2 all-time Catholic YouTubers. You got like Taylor Marshall, who just hit a milli, and you got Matt Fradd, who's over 500K, I believe. And, somewhere thereabouts. Maybe I'm missing someone somewhere in there. But I'm pretty sure that's accurate. And regardless, you think like, this gentleman has been blessed with such a profound platform to make an impact on building up the kingdom of Christ. And he's never even met an abuse survivor before, let alone collaborated in any sort of way with one. It just made me realize how rare what we have to offer is. And I already know that, right? Like, I mean, in the sense that, I've been blessed by the grace of God because of everything that's happened to be, to become the wounded healer, like I went through a healing journey myself. And I think that's lifelong, just like a conversion, right? Conversion is a lifelong process. But in turn, you also share your gifts and your experiences with others. And the vast majority of abuse survivors, as far as I know, are so wounded that a lot of times that translates in effect to, giving up on Catholicism, often giving up on Christianity outright, and understandably so, because they've been violated by the people that should have been the most trustworthy.
Right.
It's like the most scandalous thing to have, an agent of God be the source of that scandal, right? So, taking Matt Fradd at his word, I'm assuming he meant like clerical abuse survivor. Because, I've spoken to people about that since, and they're like, that is really shocking. Like, I mean, he has gender detransitioners on his channel all the time. And, whether knowingly or unknowingly, however you want to qualify these things, the chances are these different people are abuse survivors to some extent. And I would imagine that he knows that. So I'm assuming, I don't want to be accused of putting words in his mouth whatsoever, but I'm assuming he meant clerical abuse survivor.
Yeah.
Maybe Matt can clarify that. I mean, we've got plenty of people tuning in that are all connected in this network now, so I wouldn't presume that he himself would see this, but it just raised it just raised awareness for me.
Yeah.
That we need to be hearing more from this aspect of Holy Mother Church.
Right. And I'm so glad that moment in his life happened, because, I mean, we don't know what that could do for Matt in the future. I mean, Matt, what an awesome opportunity you had to speak with a clerical abuse survivor, one that's opened up and actually had the courage to share and tell about your story, because as Kyle is laying the groundwork, that doesn't happen in the lives of so many clerical abuse survivors. They're not giving any opportunity for a voice, and that's the change that we wish to see moving forward. We wish to give those abuse survivors a voice. So I'm grateful to hear that opportunity and that moment happened, because that could open a door for something really, really important, really special to happen in the lives of so many who are so wounded.
Yeah, and shout out to Matt. I mean, it was a very professional exchange.
Yeah.
We shared, I'm not going to get into all the insider baseball of what we talked about, but he shared about some of the slings and arrows he takes as well for standing up for the truth. And so we just kind of had a moment, of syncing up and connecting. And, he also gave me some advice about, the impact that we could have, witnessing to some other abuse survivors, if that's something that ever pans out. God's will be done. But yeah, I was just very appreciative of having that, give or take 15 minutes with him. And without expecting it, it kind of set the tone in a lot of ways for my overall experience there, because I was really kind of there just to be, the Western lung of East-West theology. Mm-hmm. But it also really kind of opened my eyes to recognizing just how important this work is. I think other than maybe, you think of like a church militant, which unfortunately, shuddered in some disgrace. And a lot of times they were accused of having a certain kind of a tone in the way that they would manage this stuff. But other than that, I'm not really sure. You might get a one-off. Tim Gordon did an interview with an abuse survivor. So you get these one-offs, and that's fine. I mean, sometimes it's just meant to be a project as opposed to an entire apostolate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But nonetheless, there's something to cracking open that taboo.
Right.
Because 1 in 3 women are abused, 1 in 6 men are abused, and I think one of the reasons the taboo remains a taboo is because it's so prevalent that someone in some way is implicated. Right. I mean, we're all abusers, by the way. Romans 3:23 makes that clear. Right? Mm-hmm. All men fall short of the glory of God, not including the Blessed Mother, of course. But sin is abuse.
Right.
And I think even that is differently worded than how a lot of people process these things.
Right. That's a way of thinking that so many people are unwilling to do so. If you're not thinking in that capacity that we all fall short of the glory of God, then how are you going to have the empathy for those who have received on the other end the abuse? Yeah, it's a way of thinking that needs to be molded into a way that gives greater honor to the being of who we are, which are created creatures in the image of light and likeness of God.
Right. And it is so delicate. I mean, if I shared all the stories of what we endured as a result of having to protect 700,000 Catholics in our region from potentially a priest that's a predator being placed at any one of their churches. I mean, the threats, the suspicion that you take on when it's like, do you have any idea the size of the army of lawyers that vetted me before I was even allowed to have that platform in the first place?
Right.
And you think that just because you've come lately to the party, that now you get to call it into suspicion?
Right.
It's like, excuse me?
Right.
I remember when we were at Cana, our pre-Cana program to get ready for the sacrament of matrimony.
Yes.
And I think one of the most sage pieces of wisdom, this is a bit of a veer, but we'll bring it right back very quickly here. I think one of the best pieces of advice that they ever gave was, when you're married, you should remember to say 3 things every single day, because you're probably going to need to say them every day. And that is, you remember it?
I love you.
Well, that's the last one. It starts with I'm sorry, then thank you, and I love you. Right? And,
Yes.
I've always found myself having this meditation that if people could just understand that being one mystical body in Christ, if you understand what it truly means when St. Paul says one member suffers, all members suffer, what if we all treated each other like we were in a marriage? I know there's like degrees, right? And boundaries, of course, actually having a spouse versus not, but charity doesn't have that boundary in the sense that we're all called to maximum charity constantly. So if you're in love with somebody, you should be able to just say, I'm sorry for what you've been through. Thank you for your service. I love you.
Right.
Period.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
It's that simple.
Right.
But it is what it is. So I really didn't expect that. Matt kind of, took me by surprise on that one. Not gonna lie, that came out of left field for me. Mm-hmm. And then we just kind of came back out from the basement and just had a rage fest for the rest of the night. Everybody was just vibing.
You had a transfiguration.
I mean,
yeah.
A lot of smoke. So
I hear that happens at those things.
it was a good time. It was a good time, babe.
Nice. So that really set the groundwork for just kind of your overall way of thinking for that weekend as well.
When it came to this channel and this apostolate, and just praying about whatever season we're in right now, yes, in addition to, laying more groundwork for East-West theology as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, do you want to get into some of the talks that you experienced? Maybe one in particular that really you drew a lot of wisdom from?
Well, I mean, again, there were so many gems. But yeah, I mean, so we had that night. We Dennis and I got put up by very gracious hosts. We had an incredible place to sleep for the night. Something tragic happened to me, though. I ended up in a taco situation because I was in an inflatable bed. And it's 100% my fault. I mean, again, the hosts were so gracious. But you came in to this like giant guest room, and there were 2 beds on the ground and a couch. So you see 2 beds, and you're like, all right, someone's going to get one, someone's going to get the other. Dennis got this like Tempur-Pedic, perfect, incredible situation. I took the other one, and, 'cause I'm happy to, put rocks in my pillow, so that's not a problem. But I didn't know it was a taco until it was like all the lights were out. I'm not exaggerating, about approximately 1 hour of sleep that night. between, just processing the night we just had and trying to sleep. And all I had to do was go to the couch that was like over there, and everything would have been just fine.
So you were...
But I was out of my element. I'm like, I don't know where I am. So actually, that's a tip for anybody. If you're going to go to like a high profile thing where your whole future could hinge on this thing, like...
Don't be a taco the night before.
I'm not condoning sleeping pills, but like, do whatever you need to do within reason. Like, get some valerian root, go natural, passion flower.
Yes.
Utilize the things that are ethical and good for you. So we get there the next morning, and Matt Fradd's the next talk. And in the eyes of everybody else there, I had a really simple question for Matt, but apparently I asked him a non-question. And it was because I was inspired. There was like 3 people that went before me that went on for like 30 seconds to a minute straight, essentially giving a pitch about everything that they do and then throwing them a quick question. So I tried to ask him a question, but he didn't understand it. And it ended up being another one of those 30-second to a minute things. My whole question for him is, what do you do for security? But the less than 1 hour of sleep version of me was whatever everybody saw. And it felt really embarrassing because I was like, no one in this room realizes the bonding moment that Matt and I had just had.
Right. You weren't in the
They're
basement.
just looking at me as some non-professional sketchball, And I'm like, dang, dude, like there is not enough coffee in this building.
Of course not.
And there were some great amenities.
You drink a lot
the
of
coffee was great. I mean, they had everything you needed there. So his talk was super interesting. He broke down the things that he's learned over the years, things that I still need to hold myself accountable to doing interviews myself, which is try not to make like goofy noises while you're listening to someone. I mean, if you check all my earlier interviews, they're probably all in there. But he was like,
But so critical to what you're trying to do here. I mean, how can you create content if you're going through the weeds of all your content, trying to eliminate?
Yes. Well, just don't do it in the first place. That was his message. And he was really funny about it. He was like, I've really had to learn to just be like this to people. Yes. Because you got to let them know, like, I am listening to you.
Right.
I'm just not going to make a noise right now because you
don't understand what the hours of tech work I have to do after the fact.
May God grant that be over very soon. Oh, I'm supposed to keep going?
I'm listening.
Yes.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah. No, so he dropped a bunch of nuggets of wisdom. Another one that I thought that was super interesting was the idea of being like super connected and striking that work-life balance, making sure that you're present to your family, always be cognizant of your primary duties and your state in life, right? We are all, those of us in the married life, our spouses first, parents second, and then after that you've got work, whatever helps a man in particular to provide and to protect, and then everything else, right? Community, relationships, everything. And so his advice on that front in terms of striking that balance was, he was like, I honestly have reached a point where I need to just leave like computer, phone, even phone at work. And then he just uses his smartwatch to basically it's like a dumb phone. You get your calls and you get your texts, but nothing else. Right. So that was interesting. It's like you're still high tech, you're still connected, but you're still like weaning yourself off of the fullness of it. Yeah. So that was an interesting 21st century take, and as someone with an advanced tech background, I really appreciated that. So that was a good, just a great talk, of course. Matt did a great job. I really appreciated his prayer at the end for all of us, especially. You can really tell the growth that he's experienced in his own life, just being humbled in recognition that God has blessed him with such influence and that he himself needs to continually be a good steward of that. So kudos to Matt for doing a good job with that. Yeah. And Dr. Allen was amazing. Let's see, Allen, what was your last name again? Let me see here real quick. Harrelson. Dr. Allen Harrelson from the Pipe Cottage. Southern gentleman with a southern drawl, real nice deep voice, baritone if not bass. Wow. And his big thing was just being a really good steward of what God has blessed you with and really listening. And if you agree, please comment below, because I want to have a continual discussion with you. And, just emphasizing the importance of just really, really praying about that. I mean, there's so many different things that could be said about that. We got into kind of like cultural conversations. There was even a debate with another one of the major influencers during the Q&A about the right way to do these things, and social media, what's our relationship with that, and just gave everybody a lot to chew on, and really emphasizing collaboration over competition. If you check out my conversations with Dan Lawson on this channel, he's a local Catholic therapist. We kit and play off of that theme regularly because we're both community leaders in Western New York. And it's interesting, when you are a culture maker and you bring people together, you've got the hospitality, you've got the camaraderie, you've got, building up, cultivating souls together. It is so, what separates the greats from those who are still striving and learning and leadership development is comprehending that collaborative vibe over the competitive vibe. So that was a theme that was really touched on at the talk as well. And I think it was good for some people to hear that.
Yeah, right. Oh, wonderful. Are there any, what about those who also came alongside you from the new creator aspect of things? Was there anyone whose story or whose channel you have started following or plan to collaborate with?
Well, I mean, there was a vast range of influencers, from those just starting out to those who, have got like 10,000, 20,000 plus subscribers. And I mean, I'm partial to the God Squad currently. These are my homies. You've got Dustin with Holy Smokes. He's been on The Journey Home with the Grode Eyes. And he's killing it up in Canada. You've got John with the Barricade Guard. He's really focusing on holistic health at the moment. Someone who's starting out would be Tarzan Bonanno III. He's starting out by doing interviews with people, and he puts people in like cartoon versions of themselves. And it's really, really interesting. Yeah, it's very visually pleasing. And engaging. And we've got Papi and Chulo, the Papi and Chulo show, featuring two Latino hermanos en Cristo, and they kind of, they like to walk with men showing authentic masculinity, and also kind of demystifying this hypersexualized culture, like Papi and Chulo can have in the Latino community, a connotation that's not its original chaste, sincere meaning. So they're kind of reclaiming the culture in that way. And Chulo has gone on to, he currently works for Catholic Answers. So you've got the connection with Catholic Answers there. You've got Dennis G, of course, and myself. Let me see. I think that's everybody, right? So shout out to the God Squad once again. So blessed to have met all of you. And that's really just kind of a microcosmic snapshot of the greater workings that were taking place here. You had different kindred spirits. I was noticing different people that I had met. There were others. There was Father John, a Jesuit priest who was there. And we sat together for an entire talk, and we introduced ourselves to each other. We didn't get a chance to reconnect. And that happened with so many other souls that I met there, just these chance encounters. And everybody, I mean, there's only so much you can do in 24 hours, but it was just amazing. It was amazing. There were people that were doing overtly Catholic channels, other people that were just kind of in the culture and they are Catholic, but they're not wearing it on their sleeve. You had people just involved in like pop culture, like music channels. And honestly, like, I wish I would have spent more time with some of them, because I love all of that stuff. I mean, there's nothing that I don't love when it comes to culture. I love all cultures. especially that are, as long as you're pro-life. Like, I probably wouldn't love the Aztec culture if I was around then, but
No.
you get my point. Like, anything that has something wholesome to it, I love. We love just about every kind of food there is. Like, I just love everything. Yeah. So, but I was, to your point, kind of in the zone about trying to process and discern, like, God, what do you want me to do with this custom design cross that you built for me? With this particular apostolate, which my spiritual director, for anybody who's been subscribed for a while now, knows I've commented on this channel. My spiritual director said that this is a healing apostolate.
Right.
Like I'm on this healing journey, reclaiming what it feels like to have earned the equivalent of a Pulitzer Prize, but to have been going through so much trauma. And recognizing that, you've got the top canon lawyer of Western New York telling me incredible advice and what to do and what my case means. And then you've got these secular understanding of the legal system that is completely and totally not jiving with what canon law teaches is the truth.
Of course. No.
And so, that's a conversation that's yet to even be had. Because I'm sitting here just trying to process and heal from that experience, and also the threats to our physical safety and everything else. And it's weird. It's weird to have made such a profound impact, but people move on with the memory hole of different events. COVID happened, and now we're on to the next thing. It's election season, whatever. That by the time you heal from your pain, people just look at you funny. They're like, Pulitzer, what? Like, who are you again?
Right.
It's like,
right.
It's it's weird.
Right. Well, that's the beauty of this event that took place, that there is such a grace that's being responded to and growing in the lives of so many of these creators. And Steubenville is such a special place. We all know this, but when you get there and there's just a sense of like utter joy for our Lord and using your gifts and talents in the way that God's called you to use them. And I can see no better place in the country than just this niche little community of like-minded people doing that, and so much fruit coming from it. And I'm just so grateful to hear about this experience that you had and so many of your other fellow content creators had, because it's going to heal us. It might take some time, but it is going to provide healing in so many different areas. And it's such a joy to hear that this is helping you to grow your apostolate as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't know if you feel called to re-echo this, but I know you and I had a conversation offline in the past, and you had some really, really touching words for Matt regarding the way that he, was empathetic and listening to what I had been through and providing that encouragement, even though he had never encountered someone like me before.
Yeah. Like when you had shared just that he was there and, opened and allowed you to open up about your experience. Matt, thank you for allowing that moment to take place. It's very, very unlikely for survivors to even talk about what they've been through to family and friends, let alone someone they've never met before. Having worked in the field of domestic violence, it's really something very special and something not to take very lightly that a survivor has opened up about their experience. I'll never forget the first time when that occurred to me, when I was working in a domestic violence shelter, and just being able to sit down and listen. And that's the most important thing that you did and that we can all do, is just simply to listen, to not ask questions, to not have any kind of judgment in our mind, but just to simply listen, because that survivor has lost power and control over their lives. And just by listening, you're giving it back to them and allowing them to make decisions about their own lives, and really filling them with confidence and eventually peace. That's what we all hope for and strive for. So I'm really grateful that he did give you that opportunity to share.
Well, I mean, he did ask questions, but he is an inquirer by trade. So
that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's all right. All is forgiven.
Well, no, there's nothing to forgive, but I mean, I think that this could be a really profound moment for someone like him. It doesn't have to be him, it's his choice, but to, I think, recognize that this is a much more prevalent problem in the church than the amount of attention it's given.
Yeah.
Which is a serious problem. I mean, he had nothing but positive things to say about church militant. So he acknowledges and recognizes that there's definitely a need for that in the church. But there is something to be said for, I mean, there's so many things I could share about my experience at EWTN, about my experience in different apostolates. And quite frankly, very few people are properly trained to handle a situation like that. And, maybe, I don't know, maybe we can, help be that change that we'd like to see,
right.
Not to harness our inner Gandhi spirit animal, because of course the Christian way is not by our own volition, but by God's grace.
Right.
So it's a very specific, niche, if you will. But I guess that's what's so strange about it is it's extremely raw, and it's not a business thing.
No.
I mean, these are people that have had their entire lives shattered to the point where, like, people that I'm witnessing to present tense, I pray constantly, like, how do you bring them back to just showing up at church on Sunday?
Right.
Like, some of them can't, like, if you go to a SNAP meeting, they tell the clerics, please take your clerical garbs off because you're going to trigger people. And, like, I don't know, there's just, people could learn a lot from developing the empathy required to walk with the least of these. Because that's what Jesus does, right? He leaves the 99 for the one.
Right, the one.
Yeah, and so it's definitely a groundbreaking thing to be involved with a bunch of influencers, some of whom, God love you, and I love you too, but you know who you are. Some of these people are just, working through their own personal spiritual development of trying to conquer their own egos. And sometimes being an influencer when you haven't conquered your own ego is a recipe potentially for disaster.
Absolutely. Right.
As opposed to, taking on these important
conversations, I guess you could say.
Just this extremely important mission.
Yeah. Kyle, is there anything that Teresa Yannaros shared that you thought was most important to your apostolate moving forward?
Well, I mean, it wasn't specific to my apostolate. What she did was a branding kind of sub-conference. It was really cool. So Dennis G and I actually divided and conquered at this point. They cut the room in half. They put up a divider, and you had a conference for learning your equipment, for people to get up to speed on tech savviness. Dennis wanted to take that one on so that we can swap the notes on what was happening there. I ended up with Teresa Yannaros putting on this branding symposium, and I mean, it was something for all of us to take our own personal notes and to do some personal reflection and really kind of hone in on your action statement, like attracting the right audience for your specific apostolate. And I was kind of on double duty because I was discerning, what is East to West Theology's mission and what is the Rich Dawn's mission. And, what came out of it with this is, being that healing and advocacy kind of, apostolate. Obviously, with the interviews that we're doing, we're giving people a voice to speak about what is needed for a healthy and thriving culture.
Yeah.
And with East to West Theology, we're really, we're sharing wisdom and knowledge, and doing evangelization by way of spreading theology, with the perspective of both lungs of the church, right? The East, as Dennis G represents, and the West, as I represent. and making sure that both have an equal voice and are at the fore of that conversation, so that we can, provide that balance that's really lacking in the church, where you have 99% of Catholicism being Western, 1% being Eastern, because so much of the rest of that percentage has been lost to Eastern Orthodoxy.
Right.
So, two very distinct mission statements, two very distinct audiences, and it was just a good, I recommend it to Teresa, and she was super interested in the book Primal Branding. I highly recommend it if anybody likes to nerd out on that stuff.
Yeah.
But, marketing and branding and things is something that is near and dear to my heart. I was the head of marketing for a local Chesterton, helping get them off the ground in the past. Second ever Chesterton Academy here in Western New York. So I have, a lot of experience in that regard, but it was refreshing to do it alongside others and hearing them share their stories in real time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We forget the impact that branding has had on our way of life currently. I mean, if you're not an easily recognizable and consistent brander, I guess you could say, then, your mission and your content might just be, drawn to the wayside. Whereas if everything's easily recognizable, easy to attract others, and others are aware of your mission, then you're just really going to make some great contact and great connections, and have quite the impact.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Something we're still figuring out, in our budding movement. It's weird, it's weird having the longest news story in the history of your region, a 70-year history, and your full name isn't out there because you're worried about your physical safety. And then time goes on, and enough of the flock recognize that there's an issue to the point where there's a changing of the guard. And then it's like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, when you're eligible for federal witness protection and you have a choice to make between taking that option or claiming your family name and inheritance and legacy, with all that comes with that, it's strange. It's disproportionate, the amount of understanding that we currently experience compared to the impact that's already taken place.
Right.
But I'm confident. I mean, I suppose branding plays a role in that, but realistically speaking, there's something very, very special that God's doing. So it's kind of a unique situation, and I know it's going to stabilize. I mean, that's just a part of the virtue of justice.
Right. Yeah. Oh man. Are there any other closing thoughts or insights that you wanted to share about your time at the conference?
Well, I just want to express tremendous love for Catholic Answers. I found them to be just a very refreshing group of people to hang out with. I guess I'll just conclude with chronologizing the end of what happened. So we did the conference on Saturday after being at the bar on Friday, and it was all at the St. Paul Center. Oh, and by the way, Dr. Scott Hahn pops in at one point. No one knew he would. Matt didn't know he would, but it was while Matt was up on the stage. And Scott's just like, oh, hey, guys, how's everybody doing here? Welcome to the center. Hope you're having a good time. Just doing the hospitality thing.
Nice.
And Matt's like, oh, I wasn't sure if he was going to be here. And, so you just you had this synergy. You've got St. Paul, you got Pints, you got Catholic Answers.
That's what I love about Steubenville.
It was awesome. And so when after we spent a whole day at St. Paul Center, now we're chilling at an actual sports bar as opposed to like a cigar bar. And all the Catholic creators are together. And all of a sudden, Josiah, or Thursday, as he's affectionately known as, the producer for Pints of Aquinas, just stops the whole event. And he's like, everybody, we're all going to say a quick prayer. President Trump just got shot. And everyone's like, what?
Right. Yeah.
So all of these Catholic influencers stop, say a prayer, start trying to process like what just happened. Like, is he dead? Like, what? You know? And we're like, where did this happen? Oh, there's a rally at Butler, PA. It's like, you know, an hour, say a couple, like a very close down the way from where we all are.
Right.
And then we're getting the updates in real time that Father Sharin, who's a regular on Pints, was the priest. He's an Eastern Catholic priest, Byzantine priest, who just gave the blessing at the Trump rally right before Trump went on.
Right.
And so that was wild. So we're all kind of like, people are on the horn with the people that were literally just at the rally, and we're all getting like real-time updates about what's going on.
Yeah.
And so it was an event, you know, for the record books. And so yeah, I mean, my closing thoughts are, it was just a wild experience. I'm so thankful to have been able to get through it, even on the little sleep I did. You know, and the litany of humility works very well. It really does. Yeah, that was incredible. And then there was a mass the following on Sunday, of course, to kind of close out the weekend. And on the way back, Brother Dennis and I actually spent time with Father Sharin. Not even 24 hours after he had blessed that Trump rally, where Trump is seemingly miraculously was spared from death.
What was his take on the whole experience after the fact? I mean, he got home safely and you were able to see him, so that's good news.
Yeah, I mean, he was giving us the whole blow by blow of like what had happened. He had mentioned how he met President Trump behind the curtain, if you will, podium. And as they were getting ready for the rally, and then he came out of the tent. The tent is what I was looking to say. And on his way out, people in the crowd recognized him as the priest that had just given the blessing. So they were asking him questions about how long till Trump gets out, how long till Trump gets out. And he was like, you know, I don't have all the exact details, but it should be any time now. And he was actually looking to get out of there because he wanted to beat traffic, and he had another thing to get to. And he didn't even fully make it to his vehicle with the different people stopping him when all of a sudden he heard, you know, something was happening. And so, I mean, he was still there.
Wow.
And he had just met with President Trump. He had spoken to him about, you know, the goings on in Ukraine, because I believe he's Ukrainian.
Yeah.
And just, you know, obviously having deep concerns about geopolitical, what's going on with everything. So, I mean, yeah, he just had a normal interaction with the president, and then,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for giving President Trump your blessing, Father. It was
really the country.
And the country, too. I mean, yeah, what magnitude that had.
Yeah, and everybody know, my viewers and listeners know, I'm very candid throughout the life of this podcast. I'm an extremely apolitical person. But, you know, politics, let us not forget, is downstream from culture. And we're big on culture here. And culture itself is downstream from immutable morality. So, I mean, there's definitely a place for having this kind of a conversation, no matter where you lean politically. You know, it's kind of irrelevant to this conversation, but as a matter of historical events, it was definitely an historic weekend.
Indeed. So. Yes. Wow. Wow. Well, thank you all for joining us on this episode of The Rich Dawn. And Kyle, any other words that you want to share with your viewers and audience members?
I just want to thank you all so much for being on the journey. I want to say thank you to everybody who is involved, everyone who is named, and for everyone who I named, I know there's probably 4 times as many that I haven't named. There was this incredible investigative journalist who he's also been through war like our family has. I mean, he was just talking about what it takes, him having to take down corrupt police chiefs. And so we were sharing notes about different things, and it was just so remarkable, the impact that certain people are having. And for everybody that's just having fun in the culture, God bless you as well. I look forward to collaborating with many of the people, if it's God's will, that we were blessed to meet throughout this experience. I want to thank my viewers and listeners, our viewers and listeners, for supporting us. I had made a brief note in our previous episode with Dr. David L. Gray from St. Dominic's Media, who, they've got over 26,000 subscribers, and that had zero connection to the Catholic Creator Conference. So things are really, starting to pick up now that we've opened up our conversations beyond just the Western New York region as we talk about the culture and everything else. And it all happened so fast. I've had a lot of technical glitches. We actually did a version of this that the technology failed in multiple capacities. It's like kind of remarkable how that happened. And so I just thank everybody for rolling with us, including the punches along the way. And we have, an option to donate in the description now to our apostolate. We want to really explore this idea of giving abuse survivors voices. And I think there's really something to that. I think it's so important, but we really do need the support. We ourselves have never earned a penny for unlocking $100 million for the abuse survivors of Western New York. And that's its own abuse. That's a conversation for another day. But in terms of the positive impact that we've been able to have on behalf of our fellow survivors, it's the honor of my life to have been able to be a part of accomplishing that for you. And if you'd like to support, my spiritual director actually piously yelled at me at this conference. I was in touch with him. And I was like, I've never asked for money from anybody ever. I'm super awkward about it. Like, do you think I should start doing that? And he was like, Kyle, ministries survive on one of two things, either endowments or donations.
It's true.
And if you have an important mission, and you do, you must start asking people for donations. So in obedience to that, we're opening that up. Stay tuned. We'll be actually developing further KyleDeanon.Gorlick.com, the website that this podcast is going to be hosted on as we update that, and you'll have all of that explained in there and an opportunity to bless us in that way. So thank you so much. And of course, please, if you haven't, bless us with those likes, the subscribe button, sharing it, and be a part of the conversation. Let us know how we did. Let us know how we can improve. It's a two-way conversation. Look forward to seeing you in the comments below. And yeah, looking forward to collabing with everybody that we were blessed to meet and building up Christ's kingdom together.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all. God bless you.
And if you'd like to learn more about how the conference went, this book, On the Demonic by Archbishop Fulton Sheen, compiled and edited by Father Dave Tomaszicki. As a deliverance minister, I've gotten through a good amount of it. You can tell this is well loved, and can confirm that this is very good information about not only what goes on with the demonic, but more importantly, always pointing the conversation back to where it belongs, which is Jesus Christ. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, check out the video in the description right here, right now. God bless. Honey, good news. I got a word today at the Asian buffet. I got a word today at the Asian buffet about how today's episode is going to go. It said,